Computer, remind me to stop. All right, so we're going to be doing chapter 14. I will share the screen so that, because I've got the vocabulary called up. So let's take a look at vocabulary. Starting top right. So you probably know many of these words already. The word echad is the number 1, and it is a masculine adjective, believe it or not. We don't always think of the numbers as adjectives, but they do modify nouns. And so the number 1, echad, is masculine singular. You may know it from the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and it's echad. The feminine number for 1, which they're not going to teach you yet, and maybe, I don't even know if they never teach you, I think we do numbers eventually, is achat. So it's an aleph and a chet and a tav at the end. It's not even spelled the same way. It's got different vowels and different spelling. So echad, just so that you know, is only masculine. And then we have gadol, which is a perfect thing because it's on our dreidel. Can you still see me, or you can't see me anymore because I'm...
We can see.
Okay, because I can't see you guys when I'm on this. So if you need to say something. So I've got a few unusual dreidels here that I kind of like. There's a... wait, I think it's backwards. So let's do this. Mwonk. Now you can see a nun and a gimel. Is that in the right direction now? And
it is.
And a shin. So those, this was a friend of mine, the guy I met, I should say. I don't know that he knows I'm his friend, but Hillel Smith designed these, and he does Jewish graffiti, he said, and he did that one. He was playing with kind of letter shapes, nun and gimel and hey and shin. So those are 2 funky dreidels. And the gimel stands for gadol. This one is another funky dreidel because it's made out of a nut. I mean, so try to have, this one goes backwards though, nun, gimel, hey, and shin. It's made out of a nut, so it's a sustainable source. And then, of course, as you know, one of my favorite dreidels is this one, the fidget spinner version. So it's nun and gimel, and I can't figure out which way to go. Hey and shin. So the gimel is one of the dreidel letters. Gadol, on the dreidel, it stands for the words nes, gadol haya sham, a great miracle was sham there. So nes is the only word I think we haven't had in our vocabulary so far out of those 4 words. Nes is miracle. So it's nes gadol, and we're going to learn about why it's miracle big. Haya was, sham was there. I think we learned the other words. Then we have the word zaken, which means old. One of the things that I like about the word zaken is that a zakan is a beard. So I hate to admit that whether you're male or female, if you get old enough, you wind up with a zakan, but zaken means old. And then chacham means wise. In Yiddish, if you say, "Whoa, look at this guy, what a chacham," and usually, ironically or coincidentally, the word for wise also means like wise guy. Oh, wise guy, eh? So you say, "Oh, what a chacham," but chacham means wise, whether you're in Yiddish or in Hebrew. Chacham. Tov means good. We like to say, when we did the biblical Hebrew, we were learning the Aleph Bet with Hebrew from day 1. We learned that we say that God says ki tov, that it is good. And we learned that word from there, kind of, but we weren't pushing the vocabulary then. And now we have Yosef, which is Joseph. It's the guy we're reading about in the Torah portion right now. It's the longest narrative of the Torah in some ways, of the Genesis story at least. And we're reading about him. So I think I've told you that if you are in modern Israeli pronunciation of the Hebrew, then you would say Yosef, the accent would be on the last syllable. Most of the words are always accented on the last syllable in modern pronunciation. In Ashkenazic Hebrew, in Eastern European Hebrew, you would usually, for names, you'd usually accent the first syllable. You'd say Yosef. My Hebrew name, by the way, is Yosefa. It has to do with collecting or adding to something, Yosef. But his name, it's his name, Yosef. And Leah is another name, but it's the name of a woman. I guess it was his aunt, kind of. What do you call your dad's other, maybe stepmother? Maybe, what do you call your dad's other wife when he has lots of wives? I don't know. It was his dad's wife. Let's put it that way.
Have to ask a Mormon.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Well, anyway, ma'od is not it's not an adjective. It's an adverb. It's going to modify. An adverb modifies verbs or adjectives. So ma'od means something like very. It's my favorite way of translating ma'od. But you may remember in the V'ahavta, it says, which is Deuteronomy 6:5. It says, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol ma'odecha. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, levavcha, uv'chol nafshecha, with all of your nefesh, your soul, uv'chol ma'odecha. And that means your ma'od, which sometimes is translated as might, which is kind of cool because ma'od and might sound almost the same. But it means with all your very. And I don't know how you turn that into a noun. How do you love God with all of your very? But now that you have, yeah, exactly. That was what I was about to say. Now that you've heard it, you say, wow, that's kind of cool. And now you got to go backwards and figure out what it means from all of that. But I can love God with all my very. Saviv. Saviv is to go around. This is one of the words that we use we use this in the song we did last night. Saviv is, it means around or roundabout. The songs we sing about a dreidel is called a sivivon, which is a spinning thing because it does this sov thing. It spins. And saviv means around something or roundabout something. And you'll hear some more about that in a minute. So there's a song that says sivivon, sov. No, it's the one that said, it's the other one. Chanukah, Chag Yafeh Kol Kach. We'll do that one after maybe because it's got adjectives galore in that. So Rav means great or much or a lot of. You may have heard it used when you hear the expression Toda Rabba, where you say thanks a lot, which doesn't mean thanks a lot. It means thanks much or something like that. Lots of thanks, great thanks. It could also be related in some ways to a rabbi. It looks like the same word. But, no, all right, sorry. So Rav is much or many. And then you have one of my favorite answers to how are you today, and you can say Ra, which means bad or evil. How are you feeling today? Ra. Which sounds a little like raw, but Ra. Bad or evil. And then Tachat, which is under or instead of. The instead of is the sad story of, freaky story about the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, where it says that Abraham eventually wound up using the sacrificing or offering the ram Tachat Yitzchak Beno, under Isaac his son. So it doesn't mean under him. I mean, Isaac wasn't sacrificed, so it's not like he was sitting on top of him and he went through in both, So it obviously means instead of. The other famous thing that I think about when I think about Tachat, I feel like we've done this chapter already. Have we done this chapter or no? Is this a review?
No,
I don't know.
no,
Maybe
that was
not.
not.
Maybe we did in the other class. But the other famous Tachat use in Torah that I think of is when we're standing at Mount Sinai, at Har Sinai. It says that we're standing Tachat Har Sinai. We're standing, and it sounds like the saying under Har Sinai. I don't think it means instead of Mount Sinai. I think it literally means kind of at the foot of Mount Sinai in that case. But because it says the word Tachat, it instigated a midrash. It started a midrash of the fact that God wanted to be the God of a people, and God went to a variety of different peoples, like goes to the Philistines and says, hey, would you be my people? And they said, well, what are the rules? And he says, well, no murdering. And they said, well, we're not going to murder. How are we going to not murder? That's who we are. And they go to another one, like no stealing. And we're not going to stop stealing. That's who we are. And so finally, God has this group of people, 600,000 people, according to Torah. And God wants to see if they'll be his people. And so God takes the mountain and puts it over their heads and say, hey, would you be my people? And they stood Tachat the mountain. They said, sure, we'll do it. And then we'll listen to you. Let's just put the mountain down. But actually, so the more famous thing that will remind you of what a Tachat is that in Yiddish, the word for your tush, your bottom, is tuchas, which is your under part of you, the part that's under you, not instead of you, but tuchas.
Okay, that actually does make sense.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I should have led with that one, huh? And so we have that. Then we're going to learn, in case you didn't know, where's our. So, do you have your adjective song from? We were talking about the Schoolhouse Rock. What's our adjective song for Schoolhouse Rock? Do you remember?
Ooh, that's a long time ago. I can't remember that one.
We
I
talked.
remember the one about the bill
That's right. I'm just a
legislation.
bill on Capitol, and we know
Yep.
conjunction. What's your function? I don't remember all of the
Nah.
grammar ones. I remembered the multiplication rock ones, but I don't remember all the grammar ones, and I certainly don't remember all the politics and political society ones. I remember Bill, but what we talked about it the other day during the candle lighting times, which is just fun gathering times. But my sister, when they did one of the anniversary ones, I don't remember, 20, 25, 30, I don't remember what it was after, because Bob Duro, the guy who wrote most of them, most of the songs, was in my dad's band, and dad played on a lot of the songs, and my sister was in the singing group part of the version of the Schoolhouse Rock that went on tour for some anniversary time. So, and Lang was mentioning how much he appreciated it, but I don't remember an adjective song. I'm just either too old or too young or too something.
I remember the other one. I remember very well is interjection.
Oh, that's right.
Interjection.
That's right. I remember that. All right, so we'll have to find the adjective one, but when it says used to describe a noun, it makes me think that it's got to be there somewhere. There's a song for that somewhere. So in English, you get sentences like, or phrases like a big father or good daughters or a holy nation. In English, an adjective comes before the noun it describes. And in Hebrew and in many other languages, if you know the Romance languages, the adjective comes after. And in Hebrew, the adjective comes after the noun it describes. It makes me say, like, I imagine playing this kind of cosmic game of I spy with my little eye, whatever the thing is. And so if you want to say, I spy a big, red, bouncy ball. I mean, like, you don't get to the ball until you get to the very end of it. But in all these other languages, you get to find out that you're talking about a ball, big, red, bouncy. So at least you have a clue what you're talking about at the beginning, and then you know where you're going with it. And that's kind of how this works in Hebrew. So you want to say Av Chacham is a wise father. You'd say wise father in English, but you'd say father wise. You're talking about a father, and he happens to be wise, so it's Av Chacham.
And what's kind of interesting about that is that, like you said, you don't get to what you're talking about till the end, and that actually creates a problem in certain types of things. Like when you're talking about something that you're ordering, the way it's listed is what the object is, and then each piece of it, it's just this comma, like we had this thing called an APU isolation shutoff valve in the military, and it was listed for supply as valve shut up, comma, shut off, comma, isolation, comma, APU, because it should go from general to specific.
That's a very helpful observation right there. That's a perfect example of why it should probably go in the other direction. So, and this is, I think it makes sense like this. It also makes sense to me in English to say, a very good, wise father. I get it, and it doesn't bother me at all in the English. But in Hebrew, it makes some sense. So, so then they're showing you that I'm going to share the screen again. I removed the part where I don't get to see you. But no, I didn't. I'm removing the part where I don't get to see you because we're not doing sounds anymore. And let's do it like this. Okay, now I can see you. That helps. So in English, every adjective has one form. So you say whether it's masculine or feminine, whether it's singular or plural, you're just going to say good, like good father, good daughter, whatever. But in Hebrew, there are 4 forms of every adjective. And it's important to know the 4 forms because, as I like to put it, adjectives never lie. So if it's a masculine, so you need to know that, I'm going to say it this way. Adjectives follow the nouns they modify, and they agree in number, gender, and definiteness. Number, gender, definiteness. Number means if the noun is singular, the adjective has to be singular. If the noun is obviously plural, it's got to be plural, but that's the number. Gender means if the noun is masculine, then the adjective has to be masculine. If the noun is feminine, then the adjective has to be feminine. And then the definiteness is what I call the ha-ha principle. So if you're saying the good father, if you're saying the father, I have to also say what looks like the good, what I call the ha-ha, because there's going to be a ha on every word, kind of. So if you look, and the part that I love about this is that adjectives never lie. So if you need to know if what's going on in a sentence, a lot of times when you find an adjective, because adjectives never lie, you will always know if we're talking about a masculine or a feminine, singular, plural. Singular and plural is usually a little bit harder to not see clearly. It's easier to see. But so for example, this is whatever, not necessarily the best example, but Ben Tov is a good son. Banim Tovim, so you have a Tov, Ben Tov, we'll do it in this order. Ben Tov, Bat Tova. Good son is Ben Tov. Bat is going to go to Tova for the adjective. So it's Tov, Tova, not surprisingly, Tovim, Tovot. So if you see an a at the end of an adjective, you know that whatever noun it's modifying is feminine and singular. If you see an im, you know that it has to be masculine and plural. It's not like nouns that, what did I say, 60-40? That 60% of the masculine nouns go to a plural that looks feminine, and 60% of the feminine nouns go to a plural that looks masculine. And I'm making up those numbers, but with adjectives, 100% of the time, if it's an a, you know it's feminine. If it's an im, you know it's masculine plural. If it's an ot, you know it's feminine plural. And if it's none of the above, you know that it's singular. And it's always going to be like that. It's not going to trick you. And so I like to say it's not a rhyming game, but it's an agreeing game. So for example, if I say av tov, that's good father. But if I wanted to say good fathers, I would say avot, which sounds feminine, but I would have to say avot tovim, because it's not a rhyming game, although it feels a lot like it should be. It is not a rhyming game, it's an agreeing game. So the Hebrew adjectives always agree, blah, blah, blah. The adjective and the noun together, this is an important thing, and it's not going to make so much sense when you hear the rule as it does to watch it happen. But they call it an adjective phrase, and the adjective will always come after the noun. So they're going to show you the adjectives that they gave you. They're going to show you the four forms of the adjective. When they introduced them, they only introduced one form of each. They only introduced a masculine singular, but now we're going to see the other versions. So we have echad is the number one, and there's a feminine singular, achat. I told you it was first two letters are the same, last letter is different, and the vowels are different. Echad and achat. And then you have something fairly regular. So look at this one. We have gadol, gidola, gidolim, gidolot. You have a kamatz under the first part, and then you've got a shva under the other ones. And that is, as we all know, propretonic reduction of the kamatz. When we have a kamatz in the first position, and the accent's on the second syllable, because usually the accent's at the end of the word, gadol, the accent's on the dol, gadol. As long as you have a kamatz, this is in the pretonic, which means it comes before the accented syllable. As soon as I add another syllable to the end of it, then now the kamatz went into propretonic, and the kamatz will always turn into a shva. And when I say always, the only time that there's an exception is when it's a shva that needs help, but it's still a shva. So that's why I like to say always, but when you go to like chacham, then you go to chachamim. So you'll notice that these three each have a kamatz in the first root it's not a root letter, under the first letter, gadol, in the first syllable. Gadol, zaken, chacham. Every single place you're going to have a shva under the first letter for the rest of it. The minor exception is with chacham, because it's a chet, which means it doesn't take a moving shva because it's a guttural. It's got to take a composite shva. But it's the same thing. It's just that you know that it can't take a shva without help. And so all of those are going to do the same thing. Then you get something really basic like tov, where you just add the a, the im, the ot, tov, tova, tovim, tovot. And then we have rav. Rav is going to be fairly regular. You're just going to add an a, except this is a short vowel for rav. So if I have a short vowel and I don't have a resting shva here, I have to put a dagesh in that next letter. So it goes from rav to rabbah. And the same situation is going to happen here. It's going to be rabim, and it's going to be rabot. Let me just point out, you are not going to have a dagesh in that last letter. There's no reason to. It's not going to be Rab. Remember, because that kind of, the dagesh in the vet, the point for having a dagesh in there is when it's at the beginning of a word or syllable. It's one of those beged kefet letters. And Rav is the end of a syllable. But as soon as I start a new syllable and I have a short vowel and no resting shva under here, then I need the dagesh in the bet here and the bet here and the bet here. It's the same reason. Rav, Rabbah, Rabim, Rabot, and it's the exact same word. You just have to recognize that it's the same. Sorry that there's a v and a b. Sorry I had to lie to you when you were still in kindergarten and you were still learning all the letters. I had to tell you that there's a difference between a bet and a vet, and there is no difference. It just has to do with where it is in the word and how it acts in a word. Then we have Ra, Ra'ah. So we have Ra. As soon as I add the ah at the end, all I'm doing is adding the ah. Same way as I did when I did the Tov, Tovah. Ra, Ra'ah, Ra'im, Ra'ot. Nothing else changes. That's very regular. So we have now things like Davar Tov, Divarim Tovim, Mishpacha Tova, Mishpachot Tovot. They're tricking you into a false sense of reality as if it's going to be a rhyming game. It is not a rhyming game. And so if you see an adjective in the Torah, then you absolutely know whether the noun is masculine or singular, or if it's being used as masculine or singular, or not masculine. It'll know if it's masculine or feminine. You'll absolutely know. So if you see something like Ir Gedolah, then you know, even if you couldn't remember that Ir was feminine, if it says Gedolah, it is not lying to you. It's not going to try to trick you. Ir is feminine. I don't know how that's going to matter much, but it's going to matter if you're trying to translate and it feels like, well, that can't be right, because no, I promise you the adjective will always be right. Arim Gedolot, because it's not a rhyming game, it's an agreeing game. Av Tov, that one makes some sense, but Avot Tovim, not a rhyming game, an agreeing game. So as I say, the helpful thing about biblical Hebrew is that you are not writing your own sentences. You are just trying to understand what's there. So the time when it's really cool to me is because, as I say, it's not... So that there are times that this is going to be helpful, that it matters whether it's a masculine or a feminine noun. One is when there's a verb there somewhere, and you're trying to figure out what the verb is referring to. And so let's say the verb is in the masculine and singular, and you see, or it's more likely to be, well, whatever. If you see that the verb is masculine and singular, and you see a bunch of nouns all over the place in the sentence, and one of them is masculine and singular, because you can tell because of the adjective, then you know what the verb is referring to. And that's helpful. It makes it more clear. And the other that's kind of fun, and the same is true, by the way, of what do they call it? There's no verb to be in the present tense, but there is a participle form. And the participle form is going to have the exact same four endings as this. It's what in modern Hebrew we would call the present tense. But it'll have those same exact four endings, and those are never going to lie. Only the nouns try to deceive you, but everything else isn't going to lie. And so, for example, in the Torah where it said, and Ruach Elohim mirachefet al pnei hamayim. Ruach Elohim mirachefet al pnei hamayim. So the Ruach of God, mirachefet. So what is it that's mirachefeting? And mirachefet is the verb form of hovering. And you know that it's not talking about Elohim. Elohim doesn't get referred to as a feminine, singular anything, ever. It might be plural, masculine. It's usually plural, singular, but it's not going to be feminine, singular, ever. So you know that it's talking about, mirachefet is talking about Ruach. And the cool thing about Ruach is that sometimes Ruach is feminine, sometimes it's masculine. And in this case, when God is telling the story about the creation of the world, and God is talking about Ruach, Elohim, God's breath, God's wind, God's air, God's wind, breath, it's spirit, then, not air, but spirit, then it is a feminine thing in this story. And does that matter? No, but it's still pretty cool. So anyway, we have that. And then the other thing, as I mentioned before, is the adjective is used to describe a definite noun. The adjective has to be definite. So most of the time that means a ha on it, but but it also means, all right, I'm going to let people on, but it means we're going to have to finish our class soon. Anyway, so it's, hey, Berta, we're finishing up Biblical Hebrew for a sec. Everybody's coming on. Maria's coming on too. Anyway, so we'll finish this. So it's the ha-ha is not the, it's what I call the ha-ha, because in this case, you've got habayet hagadol, or hamishpacha hatova. So if you see a ha on the noun, if you want to say the family, you wouldn't ever translate it as the family, the big. You'd still say the big family in English. But, oh my goodness, look who's here. But, and if you want to say like the beautiful Jasmine, let's say. If you wanted to say the beautiful Jasmine, you would say Yasmin Hayafa. And you'd say Hayafa because Jasmine is a definite thing. Once it's a pronoun, whether it's, so the things that are definite are if it has a ha on it, if it is a proper noun, meaning a name of a person, if it's the name of a person, let's say, or the name of a thing, then, or if it's a possessed noun. If you say it's, the king's daughter, you would have it would always be possessed, and you'd have to have a ha on the adjective. And we have a few more minutes. You guys can suffer through the end of my biblical Hebrew class. This helps because this is something we've talked about before. So we talked about a noun sentence. It has a noun and some other words. So a noun sentence is composed of a noun and an adjective. So if I say ha'ish zaken, the man, and I see the man and I see old, so I know what's happening here is that I'm not saying the old man, I'm saying the man is old. It's at what I like to call the other half of the sentence. If I say ha'em tova, I see a the on mother. And remember, this isn't you writing sentences. This is you looking at a sentence and trying to figure it out. And so it's the mother is good. I'm glad they didn't say old. Habanim chachamim means the sons or the children, chachamim, are wise. So we would call that a different kind of a noun sentence, because last time when we saw the noun sentences, both of the words were nouns. In this case, we've got a noun and I think with both of the words. We've got nouns and adjectives, and they're going to show you the difference. Habayat hagadol, we've got ha 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 on all of these. But on this, we typically only have ha on one and not on both. The problem is what happens if you have two words and neither of them have, with adjectives it doesn't matter as much. You would say ish tov, and it could be a good man or it could be a man is good. It tells you here if the adjectives are both indefinite, the word may form an adjective phrase or a noun sentence. You'll have to figure it out. It could go both ways. And sometimes, and this is really cool, and we've seen this in certain biblical quotes that you know well, but an adjective can stand alone and be used as a noun, like what I said when I said, hey, what a chacham, what a wise guy kind of thing. But if you say hu hatov, he is the good, usually in English we'd usually translate it as something like he's the good one. Or zikenim ba'ir, you might say the elders, the older ones, are in the city. Or hechacham katav, the wise guy wrote. I like saying wise guy. If you have a word pair, meaning possessive relationship between the two nouns, then the word pair is not going to get separated at all, ever. Whether you're describing the first or the second noun, it has to come after the word pair, but you can tell which noun the adjective describes potentially by which one it matches, but not always. If you say Beit Sarah Hagadol, Beit Sarah is the house of Sarah, the house of Sarah. And if I say Hagadol, then I know this is masculine and singular, so it's referring back to Beit. So I'm saying the big house of Sarah. If I say Beit Sarah Hagadolah, then I'm talking about Big Sarah here. I'm saying house of Big Sarah. And that's obvious, but what happens when they're both like masculine or both feminine? Then it's way less obvious, and then I'm going to have to use your judgment on that, like this one. Bnei ha'amim hatovim, the children of the nations, the good. So which one is good referring back to? Is it the children or the nations? Flip a coin. It may matter and it may not matter. The word very will usually modify an adjective, and it usually will come after the adjective that it modifies. Chacham ma'od, gadol ma'od, tov ma'od, it's very good. Gadol ha'ish ma'od, it could come at the end of the phrase if it's a whole sentence. Or ha'ish gadol ma'od, because the verb and the noun the verb can come anywhere in the sentence. It's a little bit more fluid. And we are going to, we'll get to this and these later, although it's really appropriate because we're about to use it in a second when we say bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. We're going to be using this and those. Right now, we're going to be using those things. So you could take a peek at it. So let me see what we got. And then I am going to, good question. Is that just to me? I got it. All right. I am going to stop the share. I'm going to stop recording.